I think it looks cool personally, but...
What the hell is even that?
So, the stem. Be More Bikes, Gen 2, 90mm rise, minus 15 reach. Pretty far out the ballpark, as you can imagine. If you're watching this video, you're probably intrigued, as I was, hence I got the stem. I'll be honest, initially it was just a bit of a gimmick, I thought. Maybe like one of those things that, yeah, if nothing else, it would be fun to ride. But after my year or two of racing previously, if you follow me closely, or you follow downhill in general, you'll have noticed that there has been an increase in riders going higher on the front end. So first of all, as you can see, 90mm rise, that's a massive amount of rise in comparison to standard bikes. But for me, this is technically only 10mm lower from ground to underside of handlebar. It's only 10mm lower than my downhill bike. On my downhill bike, I run a 50mm rise handlebar. This is only a 30. But the ground to bottom of handlebar is considerably higher to your average bike. So I wrote the questions down from asking everybody on Instagram. A lot of interest, which is really cool. That's exciting. So why? Like I say, rise. From going higher rise on the front end of my downhill bike, I noticed that you could change a lot of other things around the bike to kind of make it work. Initially, I think if you just throw it on your bike at home, it might not suit you. It might suit taller riders for sure, but with the steerer not being straight upright, the steerer coming back towards you, the taller you go with the steerer, the closer the reach is going to get to you. So the shorter the reach is going to be on the bike. So I saw this, like I say, why? It made sense to me. If you look at any other off-road sport that involves high speed and rough terrain, almost every single form of it has the handlebars mounted to an extent behind the steerer. And even if the mounting point is in front of the steerer, on road bikes and fast off-road vehicles, there's a lot of sweep on the bar to at least get your hands behind the steerer. So this is interesting because the steerer itself, the stem itself, sorry, is actually behind the steerer. So riding motocross bikes, all of those things, I wonder what that feels like. What does it do to steering? And I think throughout my whole career, and I think a lot of other mountain bikers will say this, whether you're professional or not, will agree that the front end of the bike is the most complicated. If you feel really, really confident and attached to the front end of your bike, you can ride really aggressively. Most crashes start at the front end between, I don't know, deflecting off of something or just tucking in a corner or losing the front end. So if we're riding timid, if we're riding scared, people tend to drift off the back, which actually creates the problem worse. But it's understandable. You're trying to get yourself away from the trouble, which feels like it's front end. So that was why, I guess, that wraps up why, was just an intrigued thought of, I wonder what this feels like and I wonder how it affects the front end. So the number one asked question, can you weight the front? Now this is the part that kind of blew me away. I've been riding this for 2 weeks now and it's so fun. With the right changes, so the first day I put it on, thought nothing of it, just went out on my bike, changed nothing else on the bike. And yes, it did give it that, whoa, handlebars are super high, front wheel maybe feels like it's a little bit far away. After a few days of riding it and talking with Bronson from Be More Bikes, he helped me make some changes that he's made. Now he's been doing this for a really long time. It's not just overnight fame, although it has gotten very popular over the last year. He's been doing this for a really long time. So he could give me some advice on how to change the bike setup. So first of all, he suggested softening up the forks. I've always found that my suspension has been too soft, if anything. So I chose to go stiffer on the rear. Reason for, your weight is a little bit further back. So you have more weight going through your feet, less through your hands, therefore the rear shock sits lower in the travel. So I pumped up the rear shock, softened up the front tire pressure just because there's less weight on it, less force, and that actually equated to a lot more traction. But the fundamental thing for this to really work, you can, if your bike is sitting between a 4, 5, I'd say is like the shortest I would feel comfortable with going. This current bike, the Nikolai 16, has a 460 chainstay, which is quite a progressive chainstay. That's quite long. But after riding this setup, I don't even think that's long enough. I think you could go a lot longer. So if you get this and you just stick it on your bike as a little bit of a test, and you've got a short rear end, I don't really think you're going to get the best out of it, although you will find some benefits, and one of those main things is cornering, and you'll notice it straight away when you go out into a car park. The lean angle that you can create on a bike with a stem kind of this high and behind the steerer is insane. Like, it's almost laughable when you're doing it. Because normally when you're on the edge of your front tyre, really cranked over in a flat corner, you're just waiting on the front washing eventually. If you overly load it, it'll wash. If you don't load it enough, it'll wash.
Such a pleasure to ride.
And finally, the bottom bracket height. So again, just that little bit extra weight down on the rear. Now, my funky crank experiment is also a part of this. I have 100mm cranks on. That's a different discussion. Hope were kind enough to make me these as an experiment. I probably will do another video on them. But that's the kind of reason I would say I lifted up the BB. But Bronson has also done a lot of work on this, and he found that a higher bottom bracket with this setup actually worked better also. And that is to transfer the weight back forwards. Now, saying that, you're probably all thinking, well, why bother then? This all sounds problematic. When I go back to a regular conventional setup, it feels really, really bad. And that is honestly, from hand on heart, that is how it feels. My hands feel like they're almost holding onto the front axle. Going down anything steep is terrifying. Pulling for a jump feels much harder because my back's flatter. I've got to go further in order to generate the leverage that I want to pull the bike. So with all of these changes, with all of that being said, I think this setup, done correctly, is a better setup in general, and I am really, really enjoying it. Is it faster? I don't know. I've never tested things against the clock. I'm very much a feel guy. I think the only thing that matters is confidence. I've had weekends in the past where I went to a World Cup and I've been in the top 10 with my old setup in 21, which is very conventional, 40mm stem, pretty standard chainstay lengths, all of that sort of stuff. And then next again weekend, I go to a race and I'm outside the top 30. I've changed nothing on my bike. So speed isn't as simple as, well, it's just faster or it's not. Some days you're just feeling more confident and therefore you can ride anything faster. So I guess that leads me to the next point. Who is this for? I genuinely think this is for everybody. This isn't just for high-end mountain bike racers. I've given this to a lot of my friends who aren't professional mountain bike racers. Amy Kenyon, who used to be a World Cup racer, a female rider. I think females also really struggle and get a lot of fear from the front end. Muscle groups, I'll deviate slightly. This creates a lot more, like I say, with it, more weight being through your feet, you're using your quads more, your glutes more, and your back more. Those are much bigger muscles than your arms. And I'd say 90% of mountain bike riders out there, especially the less experienced ones, because you're on the front brake more. So you've got more load on your arms for longer. So I think people will agree that steep stuff is the scariest stuff to ride, because all your weight's on your arms. If you're a little bit offline or you catch something wrong, it's all going down the hill forward, which is a really, really scary thought. This setup is so comfortable and predictable to ride. And I think that would massively benefit the mass market. Now, where that gets complicated and difficult for people to try is the fact your bike is, let's say you ride a medium. I normally ride a medium, I'm only 5'10". This wheelbase is currently sitting at 1 meter 320, which is massive in comparison to what I should theoretically be riding. But again, from the experiment myself and given the bike to other people, this bike rides almost like a medium, if not a small. Like, it's really, really playful in this setup. As surprising to me, as I'm sure that is to you to hear, and it's not just my word, that's a few other people that have ridden it. So it's difficult. It's going to be hard for you guys to go out, purchase this stem. It's not cheap. It's only made in the US. You're going to pay import tax. There's complications. You're also going to, in my opinion, have to size up. Now, I have been riding, some people will notice, Hope were nice enough to make me a 20mm stem after getting a Rulesman stem a year or two ago. I really, really loved. Stan Nisbet has been riding it for a year as well. He loves it. Hattie Harden on the team, she's had a short 20mm stem on her downhill bike and actually won a World Enduro with a 20mm stem. So I think the wheels are turning for a lot of people, and it's gaining traction for sure. And I think that's the best place for you guys to start, is to try a 20mm stem. You won't need to change your bike, but you can get away with trying a little bit higher rise, a little bit of a shorter stem, and make these other changes. If you can, make a longer chainstay, or maybe you've got a friend that rides a large, have a go on his bike for the day and put your 20mm stem on it and see how you feel. There are ways to try it. It's extreme to go from a conventional 30 or 40mm stem all the way to -15. I do understand that. I'm in a fortunate enough position where Bronson was kind enough to send me this. I was in a position to get a bike for free from Nikolai and choose a size, which was too big for me, but I knew I was going to be riding at minimum a 20mm stem. So this stem actually works really quite well on this bike. Yeah, in review, overall, this has blown me away. And I know this sounds like a ridiculous statement, but it has been absolutely profound. And I think this could well be the future of mountain biking. And that's how I feel after 2 weeks of riding this. I put these cranks on, I put this stem on, thought I'll do a week or two. It'll be fun, it'll be a laugh if nothing else. And that'll be that. I don't think I'll be taking this stem off. And in fact, the sizing of my downhill bike for next year, the adjustability that we've created with Gamix and Aeon Racing is all designed around this setup and getting the steerer, or your handlebar, sorry, the mounting point, the stem, behind the steerer. The steering dynamics of this for a professional racer, the best way I can describe it is like putting a steering damper on. Your steering wants to stay so perfectly true all of the time, and you'll notice it instantaneously riding around the car park. Take your hands off the handlebars and try and steer the bike with your knees. It's basically impossible. The bike wants to stay perfectly true all the time, and the way this corners is through lean angle more than steer. I guess I'll touch on that as well. The steerer, normally with a conventional stem, you're in front of your steerer. So you're not a one-to-one connection with your steerer tube. You're actually slightly swinging around it. So when you're trying to steer, you're almost pulling one hand around an axis in the center and then pulling it back the other way. Where with this setup, you're more pushing against it in order to get it to swivel forwards through the steerer. A really, really small thing that actually gives you massive results, because naturally when you're riding down the hill, you're pushing on the handlebars anyway. So it's a lot more natural to steer because you almost just relax one hand a little bit more and let the other one push, rather than having to pull against the force that you're pushing against. Makes sense, right? Although it's crazy, although it is crazy, I understand what I'm saying here. It does seem bizarre. Now, I'm sorry it doesn't look the best. That is what it is. But if it looks stupid but works, is it really stupid? And I think there are ways with eventually, like I say, the modern geometry of bikes changing. You can take this space up without having to do it on a stem. The reason this has to be a way up there is because bikes are designed the way they're designed, down, nice and low. A lot of people won't try this because they have sponsors. If your sponsor doesn't make the stem, you can't use it. And again, the whole reason I started Aeon is to be able to do things like this, to experiment like this and make sure that we're missing absolutely nothing. It's to achieve the most efficient body position possible. Again, you look at motocross, which is quite funny. Bronson didn't create this product based on motocross. He doesn't ride motocross bikes. He has done all of the things he can possibly think of to a bike, from trying like something obscene, like a 300 something millimeter chainstay, like so short, really long front ends. Mondraker years ago tried the zero stem technology, but they went for the really long front end and a much shorter rear end. So they had to have a short stem in order to get the reach in a comfortable position. But as we know now, the bike industry is waking up to a longer rear end. Similar to motocross, the front triangle between your bottom bracket and the front axle on a motocross bike is actually a much closer size to the rear end as well. Whereas mountain biking, the rear end's super short. Now I understand you're going down a hill. So if you had a really long rear end, that's going to force your front end down. Hence, people get shorter rear ends so the front end's not diving. This avoids that. So you can get away with having a much longer rear end without feeling like you're being pushed down the hill. If you really, really think about all of this as a whole package and change everything else to suit that, it just makes more sense in my head. And after riding it, I didn't have any of these thoughts before I rode it. And after riding it now, all of these things have been clicking, and it just makes so much more sense. It's improved front end braking ability because the tipping point of the bike is now further forwards. The force is coming down through the handlebars further behind the axle. So when you compress really hard in a corner, the front wheel will only ever want to go forward. So when you're in a really rough corner, and you overly turn or you lose traction, the front wheel wants to go underneath you straight away. We've all seen loads of crashes like that. This doesn't want to do that. The front wheel will always want it to go up and out and forward because the force is pushing the bike almost like a seesaw when it compresses up and out of the holes. So it just rides so much better. And the steering's not sluggish, I promise to you, the steering is not sluggish. If you really want to rip the bike around a corner, you can steer as hard as you like and the front wheel just will not tuck underneath you. It will only ever slide and eventually grip traction again. To the point where I've actually been shrouding front tires in corners, which I've never been able to do before, and I'm coming out of corners ending up going back up the hill again. You know, a feeling that I've never had on a mountain bike before. And this has created that. To the point where I'm changing everything. I'm changing everything about my bike just because of this. It's wild. I think my body position's better, I'm more confident, I've got more braking traction, more balance, I've got everything. So don't write it off based on its looks. Go out and try it yourself and you tell me. But from Reece Wilson's perspective, a previous world champion, one-time World Cup winner, I've tried it all. And so far, this is the thing that's out of all the suspension changes I've ever made, all the brands I've ever been on, wheels, tires, everything. Nothing compares to the profoundness of this. If you pay close attention, there'll be a lot of things coming out this year from Aeon Racing. And it's all based around this funny experiment that's become really quite serious, to be honest. So that's my review. I was hoping it would be a quick 3-minute video on Instagram. I could have made this an hour long. Honestly, there's so many things that I've noticed and realized from this that I could ramble on about. So if you have more questions, pop into the comments, ask away. I'll try and get back to them all because I'm sure there's going to be a few. But it really is exciting to me. It's been amazing. So yeah, get out and try it for yourself. Message me. I'll help you if I can and see how you get on with it. You know, don't let me tell you. Go and find out for yourself and enjoy.
Holy f***! That's scary as shit. I couldn't see nothing.